Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your First Alert Avalanche Forecast. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandri. And joining me now is Brian Lazar from the Colorado Avalanche Information Center. Brian, we finally got some snow this week, but the new snow is also driving up avalanche danger.
Yeah, unfortunately, anytime we get these dry spells, we make weak layers in the snowpack. And as we've seen so far this winter, every time we load them, we get a big uptick in avalanche danger. And now is no different, except for a couple characteristics. So let me start by showing you kind of our homepage map. And what's unique about this storm is it's really widespread. And so we have avalanche warnings in all portions, in portions of the northern, central, and southern mountains. Some of our previous periods of high avalanche danger so far this winter have occurred in maybe a couple locations, but you can see just how much of the state is experiencing very dangerous avalanche conditions. And we're in warning conditions as we sit here on Thursday, which means we do not recommend travel and backcountry avalanche terrain during warning periods, which means we have high avalanche danger that's currently ongoing.
Now, what does the avalanche warning mean for people if they are heading to the backcountry?
Yeah, we use three different special products that we might attach to our avalanche forecast, as you can see here. So an avalanche watch, which is the one in the middle here, means that we expect very dangerous avalanche conditions in the near future. So it's the dangerous avalanche conditions are coming. An avalanche warning, which is where we sit right here on Thursday, means it is occurring right now. We have dangerous avalanche conditions at the moment. We have high avalanche danger at least 2 elevation bands. It's important to note that as we move towards the weekend, you might see some of these avalanche warning conditions expire. And as we move into the weekend, you might see special avalanche advisories, which means we expect really dangerous avalanche conditions with all the ingredients ripe for an avalanche accident. We'll just be coming out of a very serious loading event, moving into a weekend with a very powder-starved population because of our lean winter. And so you might see special avalanche advisories, which means we expect dangerous avalanche conditions and extra caution, even though we might not meet warning criteria. And what's driving all of these conditions right now is we had a bunch of snowfall, as everyone has been seeing on the news, upwards of 3 feet of snow in some of the favored areas, and it is coming in with a lot of wind. So if you look at this animation, those yellow colors are wind gusts in excess of 40 miles an hour, and we've seen gusts exceeding 70 miles an hour. So that's a lot of snow loading those fragile weak layers and drifting snow onto suspect slopes. As we've shown several times throughout the season, we have a variety of buried weak layers in the snowpack. They all tend to coincide with either warm periods and rain events, which made crusts like near the bottom of this image here, or in the middle of the snowpack, you can see these weak layers that formed in January and the early part of February, which are those drought layers. So anytime we have these dry, long periods without snow and cold nighttime temperatures, we create very weak and fragile snow on the snow surface. Once we bury that, those fragile weak layers do fail, and that's what we saw last week in some areas of the Western Elk Mountains, which were kind of leading the curve, but you can see that those February drought layers in the upper part of the snowpack did not handle their first test, and we're seeing those kind of conditions spread now to most of the state. You can see a couple skier here on the ridge. One little stomp on the slope gets the whole thing to shatter, and this really just indicates how fragile these weak layers are. You can see that with all of the drifting, a lot of these avalanches are now getting to the point where they're breaking 2 to 3 feet deep. After this week's loading event and drifting, we could see some of these avalanches break 4 feet deep or deeper, which could be enough for them to step into those deeper weak layers. So we're not only going to see the most widespread dangerous avalanche conditions of the year, we are going to see the biggest avalanches that we've seen so far this season.
So heading into the weekend, what should people be on the lookout for?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, check the avalanche forecast at colorado.gov/avalanche or on the CAIC mobile app just to see what state we're in. But you're likely to find very dangerous avalanche conditions as we move towards the weekend. The most dangerous slopes will continue to be those that face the north half of the compass, including east-facing slopes and wind-drifted terrain like what you can see here. So not only are we getting a lot of load, but we're getting a lot of wind. So any of those slopes that are receiving all this wind-drifted snow will be the most dangerous. We should have some pretty clear signs of instability, including ongoing natural avalanche activity. Many slopes will remain ripe for human-triggered avalanches, and you're likely to experience widespread audible collapsing, slopes shattering under these collapsing like this, and experiencing shooting cracks. These are all indications that you're in very unstable snow. And so what we do want to emphasize is even though the warnings and the headlines might drop away by the time we get into this weekend, many slopes are going to remain ripe for human-triggered avalanches. And so we really are worried about an accident this weekend. We do want to caution people that you can enjoy the snow, but we're going to really need to stick to conservative terrain choices because of how tender it's going to be, which means essentially recreating on slopes 30 degrees or less without steeper terrain overhead.
Thank you for joining us, Brian. That's some great advice.
Thank you.
And we will see you back here next week for your First Alert Avalanche Report. And make sure to join us on our streaming service for your First Alert weather forecast. Every 10 minutes, you can watch us anywhere through the CBS News app.